Welcome, everybody, to our almost last episode of the second season of our podcast, Drip by Drip Unveiling Fashion's Thirsty Truths. I'm really happy to share this podcast episode today with Nitya, who I briefly met a few months back in Berlin at an event, actually, where I also met the person I talked to from Cividep, Kaveri. In one of the early episodes of the season. And we want to use this time today to learn more about Indonesia as a case study, because most people I think don't know how really intense and really important the textile sector in Indonesia is for the local economy. So Nitya, thank you so much for making the time to let us know and understand a bit more about the situation for textile workers in Indonesia. And I would like to ask you in the beginning to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes. Thank you very much, Amira. It was such an honor to be here. So, hi, everyone. I'm Nitya. Everybody usually calls me Nitya. So, I used to work as a program officer at the Trade Union Rights Centers in Indonesia. I focus on labor rights and then OSH or occupational safety and health, as well as gender equality, especially textile and garment sector. So I've conducted programs and research as well related to the condition of women worker, both in formal and informal sector. Yeah, and I've also worked closely with unions, trade unions, labor unions, and also stakeholders in Indonesia, India, and Germany.
Yeah, amazing. This is actually, and this is the project that made us get to know each other in Berlin. So we will definitely talk about this a bit later. But to start this episode, I would like to ask you a question that was raised by our former guest from the last episode. That was Zion from Ethiopia. Zion is a social entrepreneur and also a designer. And we asked her to give us a question to take to this episode to ask you. And her question was, how traditional and artisan textile techniques from Indonesia, in your opinion, can shape sustainable textile and fashion trends globally?
Okay, it's an interesting question. So thank you, Sion, and nice to know you, read your name there. Well, in my opinion, I think most of traditional textile from Indonesia, like batik, tenun, ikat, and etc. I mean, its production are most of the production are deeply rooted in sustainability. I mean, they are. Most of them are locally sourced material, and they use natural dyes and hand woven techniques, and they also have this strong community based production. So I think they over a counter narrative to fast fashion. It doesn't just preserve the heritage or the culture, but it also teaches us to slow down fashion or something like that. Yeah, thing.
Yeah, that sounds great, because I think this is a really important global trend also in terms of the consumerist perspective to use fashion a bit more sustainably, to buy less, to choose the fabrics very well, fabrics that will last a long time, and to turn back to older techniques that might be the more sustainable option than the mass production from fast and super fast fashion.
Exactly.
So since we already talked about artisan, obviously Indonesia has a very rich cultural heritage and is very well known to tourists worldwide, especially those who like to travel to places such as Bali. And it's a hotspot for yoga and these kinds of, let's say, sustainable living techniques. But I think most of the people are not very familiar with the fact that the textile industry in Indonesia is a very important part of the economy, and that 2.7 million people are working in the textile sector in Indonesia, which is quite a bit compared to the overall population. So is there something that you would like the Bali tourists and the people in general who just perceive Indonesia as a travel destination to know, to better understand about the country? Something that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I think it's important for all the tourists or all people all around the world to recognize that like millions of Indonesians, especially women worker, they work behind the scenes of these textile and garment sectors here in Indonesia. I mean, these industries are actually like a foundational to our economy, like so-called foundational, but it also sites of like intense labor and then long hour, poor working conditions, and etc. Like I think like questioning where our clothes come from, I think it helps a bit to shift awareness, like and demand to work like fairer systems. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too. So, what is the current condition for the especially female textile workers in Indonesia? What are the main challenges that they're facing during their labor hours?
Yeah, so as I have mentioned, I have like conducted a research and a program with my other colleagues from TRC Indonesia about
Hmm.
garment workers, textile workers, as well as footwear workers, informal and formal sectors. And for many textile women worker, like yeah, especially women, the reality is like low wages and then insecure contracts and unsafe working environments. And well, some gains, I mean, like some improvement have been made through like trade union or labor union advocacy, but still the systemic issues still remains. I mean, like gender-based violence everywhere, and then limited maternity support, and then weak enforcement of labor protections, of course. And
Hmm.
I mean, the government in Asia often promotes this textile industry, this footwear industry as a national economic driver. But I
Hmm.
think yet it fails to protect the very worker who sustain it, who are in it. So that is like a significant gap between like policy and practice. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is what we heard from most of our guests in this season, from the different countries, from Pakistan over India to Bangladesh. That this is, yeah, mainly the case in the countries. That the fact that the industry is really strong is something that the governments are really proud of. But then, on the other hand, the workers are not really being protected, who are actually doing the work. And is it in Indonesia also the case that most of the workforce are female, or is the ratio a bit more balanced than in most of the other countries?
Yeah, I mean, most of the workers in textile, garment, footwear industries are also female women workers, but
Hmm.
it's not that it's not that they apply like gender equality or gender equity in the factories, but it's just that they think that they can silence women easily rather than they can
Yeah,
silence men. Yeah.
yeah,
So.
yeah, most probably.
Mm.
And one spontaneous question: is also child labor an issue in Indonesia? Would you say that this is managed by laws and regulations?
Yeah, actually, I think child labor is managed by laws and regulation.
Hmm.
But I mean, in like several factories and several areas that where my research was conducted, we haven't found any child labor yet, like a direct child labor, but for the informal women workers,
Hmm.
because they have like super duper unrealistic target that they have to like finish and they work
Hmm.
at home, so they indirectly uh, it's not that they want to, but they really need to also employ sometimes their children, something like that. So it's not direct, but still,
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, I
children
think.
are impacted, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the global phenomenon, right? That parents don't necessarily want to involve their children in the work they do, instead of sending them off to schools, but they just economically are being forced to involve them. So yeah, it's something we
Yes.
discuss also a lot in our NGO. This like paternalistic view from Western countries and NGOs also, to obviously be against child labor, but on the other hand, having to understand that this is a decision that parents are making for their own families. And if this is economically viable and important for the families, then maybe it's not something we can completely, try to diminish. At least
Exactly.
not by making like different offers to the families.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, even like what I said by like unrealistic is really unrealistic, and sometimes they are charged like fine. They are fined
Yeah.
if they don't finish their target,
Wow.
for example, something like that. So yeah.
So they don't get paid. What would the fine be? They don't get paid the amount of money that was agreed upon beforehand.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm talking about this informal women workers. So
Yeah.
in the research, there are like two different types of worker. The first one is like formal women workers. They work in a factory with with I mean with a union. I mean yeah. And then the other one is informal women worker, where they work at home, like without law and regulation, without recognition from government, and it's very hard. It's quite hard for them to like establish a union or a trade union compared to the formal. But both face their own like issues.
Challenges.
Yes, challenges still. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. So you were already diving into my next question. You were just recently working on a project mapping gender health aspect and security aspects in the textile and footwear industry in Indonesia, together with two other German organizations and Cividep from India. So can you share with us what your main learnings, or maybe the most surprising learnings, were from this project?
Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the key finding was how normalized poor health conditions are, especially like around mm, what is it, like gender related health condition like menstruation. I mean, we found that many factories lacked adequate sanitation, and then rest areas and menstrual product, etc. And as I have mentioned, also the women worker aren't silent by voice. They were working under this condition where like speaking up, something like that, could risk like retaliation or job loss even. I mean, yeah. I mean, this silence is like a systemic, like it's like a manufactured or something like that. And yeah, I mean, like global brands demanding like ever faster, cheaper production, and then the suppliers like cutting corners to stay competitive, and then the government that fails to enforce the basic labor and health standards. So we think that the women worker know. I mean, they know what needed to be improved, but they've been made silent, or they've been made invisible by this system that designed to what is it, like value profits over people, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say are the things that the female workers feel are needed or should be improved for them to have better conditions?
Yeah, I mean, all the things that I have mentioned, I mean, they understand that. They also understand, like, the poor health condition, and then the inadequate sanitation, and inadequate, even, no menstrual products at all, and then how they are not in charge in like higher position. So as I have mentioned, like 80% or 90% of the workers in the textile and garment industries are women, but the higher positions are always like almost all men, or most of them are still like men or male workers. So but
Yeah.
it's still, it's hard for them to like speak up because the job
Yeah.
loss and the union ban and everything.
So would you say that unions are like a solution to that problem? Because then at least they come together in a collective. So their voices might be a bit stronger because they are like many women saying the same thing? Is that like a solution to the problem, or are the trade unions also being silenced?
Well, it's very I mean, diverse. I mean, some of the unions here are also silenced, and some unions are not. But still, the what is it? The higher position, even like because of the patriarchy. The patriarchy in Indonesia, the patriarchy practices in Indonesia. I mean, most of the leaders, most of the higher position, at the top position in the trade unions are also like male workers. So I think, and also I think like a formal sector, informal sectors, the trade union, the labor union, they have made progress, I think, in advocating for us and in gender-based protection. But in for informal women workers, they're not always accessible. So yeah, it's still like I mean, yeah, it's a viable solution for like a formal worker, but then for informal worker, we still think about like other things because
Yeah.
it's hard.
Did you, through the project, did you come up with solutions for the informal workers? Is there something that you advise them to do in order to protect themselves a bit better?
Yeah. So in the project that I worked so we actually we in another project in a trade union rights center, there is this policy brief, like policy review for the constitutional court to recognize the informal workers in Indonesia, but it got rejected. But then we came up with another idea for this in this project that I worked with my other colleagues. So we helped to establish this OSH unit, and it's for free. So because it's actually like a program in for the it is a program by like regional government or something like that, but it's not very well socialized. So like it's not socialized very well, it's not implemented very well. So we have to like establish this OSH unit to for like a free medical checkup for the informal women workers, and and I've been involved in like two or three times, two times of the medical checkup, and the doctors and the nurse like found some some symptoms that might be like occupational disease. So, you know that it is caused by like working. So with like a letter or like a formal statement from the doctor, this women worker can go to like a better hospital to get like a better treatment, because without the recommendation from the doctor, they cannot go. I mean, they can go, but they have to queue, and then it's expensive, and it takes like a long time to wait, and etc. But yeah, I think it helps a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure, definitely. What were those occupational symptoms that they had? Was it like mainly in their muscular, like in their hands, or what are those symptoms?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the women workers in North Jakarta, where we did the research, they have like a lot of musculoskeletal problems with joint bones, and then some other body parts, and they also have cancer. Some of them also have like cancer, like lung cancer, because they deal a lot with like a glue, but it's like a yellow glue that is quite dangerous, and they work without protection because I
It's
mean,
informal.
it's informal, and PPEs are not provided, so they have to buy it, but it's expensive, and they have to buy it regularly. So so some of them got like lung infection and then lung cancer and etc. And it also affects the like another family member in the house.
Yeah, I
at
was just
home.
gonna ask if you have those like toxic smells in the house, because obviously the
Exactly.
informal sector is mainly being done in their homes, in their houses. Then
Yes.
obviously it will also affect their children, their spouses,
Yes.
older family members, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Crazy.
Even we found like it's not like a lot, but a few death of a child and a death of a like a baby, and then and miscarriages. Due to the what is it, like a toxic that
Yeah,
the
the
toxin that
chemicals just
yes, yes, that they keep
wow.
like inhale something like that, and they don't live like in a proper big house or something like that. I mean, the houses are like small and cramped and with like bad ventilation and etc. So yeah, it worsens the situation. But
Yeah.
there is no recognition from the government. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. And why does the government in general allow this informal sector? Why don't they say this fashion industry is so important economically for our country that the informal workers have to work in some sort of a factory setup?
Yeah, so actually, for the women workers in Indonesia, it's quite complex because the supply chain from the worker to the brand that employ them, it's very far. So, for example, the brand is the first tier, and then probably they're in the like seventh or eighth tier. I mean, they've been through like a lot of middlemen, intermediaries. Even they don't contracts or something like that. They are not. I mean, they're quite like unknown. I mean,
Yeah.
some of them also don't know which brand they work for because they just got like the job from like the neighbors or something like that. But it
Yeah.
leads to like a brand, but it got lost in the middle. It's something like that. So
Yeah. So the
it's very,
factory basically, if they cannot meet the expectations by the brands and they need more output, then they have certain middlemen who go to the villages or communities and find informal workers to help them meet the targets, basically.
yes, exactly. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, something I wanted to ask is when I talked to Kaveri from CVDEP in India, she mentioned what was so shocking to me at the event where we all met each other, that women as young as 30 in India, like female textile workers, get their uterus removed because the menstruation is such a big challenge for them in order to go to the factory, to be able to work and to meet the targets. What is the situation in terms of gender health for the textile workers in Indonesia? Do they have the same challenges? Or not that, I mean, the challenges are the same, but do they also take such very like stark measures in order to manage the situation, or is it not as bad in Indonesia?
I mean, it is also bad here. So, as I have also mentioned, that there is like a lacking of like sanitary with a
Products.
good standard and products and etc. And
Mhm.
it's quite hard. We actually have this what is it, like a menstrual leave, but it's very hard to take the leave. So, it doesn't really work. So, and also for hysterectomy, I think I haven't heard or I haven't found, as long as I
Mhm.
conduct the research. But like a lot of women worker, like many of them also have like this menstrual pain, but most of them like hold it and until what is it, like it becomes regular. I mean, when we conduct this interview with one of the women worker, like several women workers, and they think that that is something that they have to bear. I mean, it's no big deal, something like that. But
Yeah.
but for a long term, it's going to be like a big deal because yeah, because it's hard to take the rest, and in the target is unrealistic, and then it's also hard to take the menstrual leave, and
Can you explain
yeah.
that, Nitya? Why is it hard to take the menstrual leave? What sort of a process do they have to take?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk to the to management, and when we look at the law and the regulation here, we actually have this 2 days of menstrual leave, and
Every month?
it's, yes, every month. It's supposed to be like any other leaves that we can take. It should be as easy as I'm having menstruation, like I need to leave or something like that. But then, or maybe you can, you can talk to your supervisor and something like that. But then, because of this unrealistic target, like the women worker work like in a line, like in a, what is it, like a like a production line.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have like a pressure horizontally and vertically, if I can say that. So there is like a several step to make a shoe, for example, in a footwear factory.
Yeah.
Like you have to like cutting and sew and assemble it, something like that, and they depend on each other. Where like we cannot assemble without like sew it first, without like sewing it first, without like cutting it first or something like that. So they depend on each other, and it makes them it makes them like hurry something like that. And then that is horizontally, I say. And then vertically, they got shouted, they got the pressure from their supervisor, and then their supervisor got another pressure from their like a building manager or something like that. So yeah, it's all shout and pressure in the building, in the factory building. So
yeah, so the legal regulation is well meant, but not really being implemented and really useful for the workers. So what would you say could really change the situation for the female workers for the better in Indonesia? Is there something that through this project and your overall work, obviously, like you would say this would really make a positive impact if it was implemented?
Yeah, well, I think I haven't mentioned them a lot, but I think brands, like international brands that like have like suppliers in Indonesia and all other Southeast Asian countries and South Asian countries, I think they must like pay fairer prices and stop like exploitative production timelines that in the end squeeze the workers at the end of the supply chain. And also for the suppliers, I think they also need to like invest in like a gender responsive workplaces with clean toilets, menstrual support, protection against harassment, and etc. And also I think the government, of course, they must enforce like a like a better labor law, and like support union organizing. I think no union busting, and then they have to provide accessible healthcare and childcare for the worker. Like by childcare, I mean like because of 80% of the workers are women, and most of them have also children, and we don't have like a affordable daycare here. So it's very hard for the woman to like it's going to be like a double or triple burden for them to like juggle between work and their children, something like that.
Yeah. Is that also a reason why so many women choose the informal sector over the formal sector, maybe? Because they have to stay home to take care of their children?
Yes, exactly. I mean, the informal, some of the informal women workers, they know that they will have, I mean, they will get like a a better condition. It's not better, actually. It's still not good, but you know
but
what I mean.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
like a different condition by working at the factories, but they cannot. They just cannot. They have to take care of their homes and their children and everything. So they prefer the home based. It's some of them do that. So
I understand. So Nitya, you were You were mentioning the responsibility of the governments and of the brands, obviously, who place the orders. But what about the consumers? One question that I asked all of the other guests beforehand too: what if the world, like the consumers in the world, would stop buying new clothes all of a sudden? Obviously, very utopian because it's not going to happen. But what if we all stop
Amira,
buying new?
sorry, I think I lost you.
You lost
Sorry.
me. Do you
Yes,
hear
yes.
me? You hear me
Yes,
now? Okay,
yes.
perfect. Sorry.
Sorry.
So, my almost last question would be, in terms of the consumers. We know that we already have enough clothes in the world to like protect us all, and to be able for us to wear fashionable clothes, and all of that. But what if we stopped buying new clothes? All of a sudden, all of us, so there would be no need to produce new clothes. Do you think that would be, or would have a positive impact on Indonesia and obviously on the women textile workers in Indonesia, because they would have to like find new opportunities? Or do you think it would be rather negative for them?
Well, it's rather a hard question actually,
Hmm.
but
I
I
know.
think, in my opinion, like stopping like footwear or garment and textile production overnight, I think it could harm the workers who depend on the
Hmm.
industry, of course. But like uh, we need like a balance, like a transformation, like a
Yeah.
slowing the production. I think it
Hmm.
could shift us toward like a transition, like a better transition, like a just transition. Like
Yeah.
it's not only about reducing consumption, which is
Hmm.
needed, but also like redistributing value more like fairly, like
Yeah.
fairer across the supply chain. I think, yeah, that needs to be done.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think you agree also with all of the other guests we had on the podcast this season, because everyone gave almost the same answer. So I think everybody agrees on that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I mean, I myself cannot imagine if it just stops. Like
yeah.
one day it stops. Yeah.
Yeah, of
Or
course.
yeah, of course. I mean,
Would be
even
really
like,
hard.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the what is it? The unemployment rate in Indonesia is quite high. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, that
we
would probably just make it rise even more.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we need what is it, like fair wages and like a fair working condition. Yeah, that's what I think everybody needs.
Yeah, definitely globally, I would say in the textile industry for sure.
Yeah.
So, Nitya, thank you so much. We have already reached the end of our episode today, and I just have one very last question to ask you, which is basically giving us a closure or a circle a moment to the very beginning of our episode. And I want to ask you, what is your question for our next guest on the podcast? We will record our very last episode of this season with the COO of a secondhand online retailer here in Germany, who's responsible for the whole fashion part of the company and the secondhand store. So, what would you like to ask her if you had the chance?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Amira, for the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, how can like a slow and circular fashion models for the global north, how can it better support like producer in countries like Indonesia too, beyond just
Mhm.
promoting like conscious consumption in the global north? Yeah, I was just wondering.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
will definitely take the question with me,
thank
and
you.
give it to our next guest. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Nitya, for making the time and letting
Thank
us all
you.
understand a bit better about Indonesia and sharing all the insights from your previous work with us. It was very, very interesting. And I hope we stay in touch and meet again, maybe in the next season.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Amira. Yeah,
Thank
I
you
believe
too.
we'll stay in touch. Yeah. Bye bye.
Definitely. Bye.